Okay, so our next item is Assistant Superintendent Mike. Tell him avoiding your saying your last name in public.
Appreciate that. Protection. So in your packet, I did provide a updated financial report. Last week, we gave you a financial report that was from the end of September. This is from the end of October. So just some highlights between last week's report and this week's report. I had mentioned last week that we had not encumbered all items that we could, and we did include encumbrances in this report for teacher leader stipends. Electricity had been encumbered, but not to the amount that it probably should have been. Stipends, there are a couple of stipends that weren't there. Gasoline and diesel fuel that we use for our vehicles, buses, and district vehicles. We fuel up at the town depot for their gas pumps, and then they just, we have a swipe card that tells what vehicle we fueled up, and they send us a bill every quarter. So we encumbered that. Legal services. At the end of the year, our Unit A members, our teachers in collective bargaining Unit A, get a 403B match if they are professional teacher status. So we had not encumbered that. We did that. We did find out this year that we have a school resource officer chargeback that we didn't know about. We encumbered that, although it may not actually budget, so we did not have that. It's a small amount, it's not anything major. And then our athletic trainer, we have a contracted service with one of the hospitals, and I can't remember which one, but we did encumber that also. So I feel like we're probably in a much better encumbered situation than we were before. We have a much better snapshot of where we stand within the current balance. Granted, with 8 months still to go in the year, we still have a lot of time to look at those things. In addition to that, I mentioned at the last meeting that the special education out of district tuition accounts were way out of whack. They were overspent. It's because we hadn't charged off the circuit breaker yet. I worked with Lisa Marie's department, Kathleen, and we readjusted the purchase orders to come out of circuit breaker for the students that they should have been coming out of circuit breaker. So that was about $1 million swing one way. These encumbrances was a $500,000 swing the other way. So we're actually in a $500,000 approximately better position than when we were last month from an unexpended balance. We used to call it surplus, but people didn't like that word. It's not a surplus, it's just unexpended balance. There's certainly some things that we can't encumber yet. Athletic facility rentals, we need to rent ice rinks, and we need to rent other facilities for our athletics groups. So we have not encumbered all those yet. Kent usually encumbers things by season. So very shortly we'll start encumbering the winter season athletics expenses. Facilities and custodial over time, those are some things that we can't always so there are some lines that look abnormal, and I had a conversation earlier today, or email conversation earlier today with Mr. Schmeck-Pepper, and there are some things that SoftWrite and Munis are not aligning on properly. So it looks like a salary is being paid out of SoftWrite account number A that should align to Munis account number A, and it's not. So there's some things off. I caught some, and I tried to fix some, but I try to do my reports at the end of the month, run my reports at the end of the month, and provide to the school committee at the next available meeting, which was today. So I only had a couple of days to put it together in order to get it up into the drive for you to view it in advance. So there are some things that need to be tweaked. I think once we get to January, everything will be in Munis. All the software will be dumped over into Munis. Right now, I have to pull data from 2 systems and marry it into one spreadsheet. Once Alicia, Ms. Benjamin, can get everything over into Munis, which I believe will happen after the last official software payroll, then I think things will be a lot more cleaner and smoother. But I will tweak things as I catch them, just so that you can see things. Like I highlighted in your reports, the yellows, those are things I manually encumbered, and I need to manually encumber them every month. So I have highlighted yellow for my benefit, but also you can see what I did this month. But all in all, current unexpended balance of $3.33 million, $3.34 million. And that has to get us through June 30th.
Any questions?
I have a few questions. Do you just have a sense of the high level? So the $500,000 that, I don't know what word you used, is unspent or whatnot. What do you have a sense of what's driving that? What changed from September to end of October?
So, yes, absolutely. So, we were at 2.8 million,
Three.
right, and we're now at 3.3. So we went from 2.8, we actually should have gone to 3.8 because we moved about $1 million into circuit breaker. But then we took $500,000 and encumbered in electricity, teacher leader stipends, all the things I mentioned.
Yep.
You know, all those things. So the delta between those two is $500,000. So we're right on track to kind of where we were. Plus, you know, I wouldn't say the whole $500,000. We had expenditures this month that certainly weren't encumbered until after, or until we got the invoice or placed the order. But yeah, that delta in between, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I mean, so I understand the offset and how we're getting to the 500. I was more wondering like broadly, what does that relate to? Because we're in a better position to 3 days ago.
Well,
So
right.
like what makes that up?
What
The
makes,
net of the two is 500, which I get, but still, then something must have changed to get.
so we took $1 million out of what was in this report and local budget.
Yeah.
And moved it to a revolving account.
Yeah.
Expenses to a revolving account. And then we took an additional $500,000 in new expenses. And so, well, our unexpended balance, if we hadn't moved to $500,000, it would have just shown $1 million difference. But since we moved that, we encumbered another $500,000, encumbered and expended. That brought us down 500,000 from where we went up. So we went from 2.8 to 3.8. Then we encumbered stuff, it came back down to 3.3. Am I losing you there? Or?
I think so, that's fine.
All right, we can take it offline, sure.
Yeah, that's fine. And then I had two others, just generally, how should we be thinking about lines that are negative, that are over encumbered? Is that some of the things you're talking about, where like maybe the accounts are not lining up? And then my last one is just, I saw the school committee central admin legal costs look like they're at 100% of budget. Is that true?
So
It's one of the highlighted yellow ones that says it's like there's 0% left.
So what actually, if you look at the line we have expended, I gotta bring it up here. We have expended
60.
56,000. Except we've expended 56,000 and I just encumbered manually the rest of the balance in the line, knowing that we're gonna be spending that.
Okay.
So that's a manual encumbrance. And that's not with any particular, it may not, you know, it may be between Valerio's firm and what are some of the other firms we use, Lisa Mead's firm, and some, you know, we use multiple firms depending on whether that's labor or whether it's contractual or, you know, non-labor contractual. If there's an investigation on something, we can use a third firm. So depending on what firm. So usually when we encumber something, we encumber it by vendor. We open a PO to that vendor. In this case, I did not open a PO to the vendor specifically. I just encumbered the entire amount in a spreadsheet. Basically, I committed that money in the spreadsheet. So we would not, we could account for, make sure we didn't spend that. Is there two parts to that question?
Just the negative balances.
Oh, the
an
negative
account,
balance.
like
Yeah.
an account mapping.
So some of those negative balances are gonna wash out. Some of them have occurred because, just take a salary line and just say that there's one person in it. Line. Take my line. You know, Mike Piffling's salary line, it's X. And, for some reason, I'm no longer here. And there's somebody else in my role, and that person comes in higher or lower. That's going to skew that line into a positive or a negative balance. So if you take our 535 staff, you know, we hire, you know, we probably hire 30 or 40 people this year conservatively.
Yep.
Those lines are probably going to be off because if somebody retired or resigned
What's in eight.
at step 6 and we rehire at step 8, it's going to skew that line. And some of them are the soft right units conversion. Some of our staff, when we build the budget, some of our staff has informed us that they intend to move a column over, meaning they're going to get an advancement on the degree. They went from a master's degree to a master's plus 15. We don't budget for that for each individual person. We put a line in the budget that says that lane changes. It's called lane changes. It's under administration on page 8 of the report. Theoretically, if we weren't in the middle of unison converting and
Yeah, that's
everything,
fine.
we would do the budget adjustments for all those lines to make them all zero out and give us a true factor of where we were. But until all the payroll comes over from software, I feel like that would be an exercise in futility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Assistant Superintendent Piffling.
Thank you.
There, I'm kidding. Thank you. Our next item is under the consent agenda. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the following. The identified schedules of bills totaling $500,243.96. And the meeting minutes from our October 30th, 2025 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Motion is made by Kate, seconded by Melissa. All in favor? Motion passes 4-0. You. Our next item is the request to name the auditorium. Is that something, Superintendent, you're gonna?
So I can just speak to a little
Kick it
bit.
off.
So, actually stepping in, had reached out, just, thought that, Henry Christensen, sorry, had reached out, thought to, I want to mention, Greg Dana, who's been with the district for many years, and, I think it's like 52 or something, a long time, 54, 51, okay, so plus 50 years, and which is great. And so the thought process was to, start the conversation. Obviously, it has to come before the school committee, and there needs to be discussion about that. And they, actually know that this was the first step in the process. Put it into writing, submit it to the school committee for discussion. And so that's where we are tonight. And if you want to that.
Yeah, that's fine. She's prepared to do so.
Yeah, just, yeah. Well, we can spot.
I think you might pulled up the.
Yeah, just in case folks have questions, I think I don't want to get too far down the road, but I think some of the conversation is, not necessarily, the naming of it after Greg, but also like the conversation the school committee has to have about.
It is.
Leave that up to you guys.
Okay. So thank you very much for having me tonight. This is the letter that I submitted along with Henry Christensen a couple of weeks ago, so I'll just read that out loud. Myself and Mr. Christensen are submitting this letter on behalf of the countless alumni, colleagues, collaborators, and friends of Mr. Greg Dana to formally request that the unnamed Marblehead High School auditorium be officially dedicated and named the Gregory Dana Center for the Performing Arts. Together, we've had the privilege of working closely with Mr. Dana in various capacities over the years. Our experience has deeply impressed upon us the extent of his impact on both our students and on the broader school community. Greg's 51 years of service to Marblehead Public Schools, his unwavering commitment to the performing arts, and his profound dedication to mentorship has left an indelible legacy that extends far beyond the walls of Marblehead High School. It is altogether fitting that we recognize his contributions in this manner and at this time. Although Mr. Dana officially retired from teaching several years ago, he remained an active and vital presence in our production, serving as tech director for our METG festival submissions, as well as our spring musicals up until this fall. In the years following his retirement, Greg continued to work alongside students and staff with the same passion, patience, and precision that defined his lengthy career. A lifetime member of the Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild, he shepherded the program through every advancement and challenge, always with an eye towards creating opportunities for student artists to learn and shine. Over the decades, Greg inspired generations of young people, many of whom pursued technical theater and film at prestigious universities and who went on to have successful creative careers. This legacy is measured not only in their professional accomplishments, but in the countless lives he touched, the confidence he instilled, and the community he built through the arts. To dedicate the auditorium in his name is to honor a lifetime of service and to ensure that future generations recognize the foundation he laid for excellence in the performing arts at Marblehead High School. And so again, on behalf of the many alumni, colleagues, and community members who wholeheartedly support this request, we respectfully urge the committee to approve the dedication of the auditorium as the Gregory Dana Center for the Performing Arts. Such a tribute would be fitting and enduring recognition of his extraordinary contributions to Marblehead and to what I believe is literally thousands and thousands of students whose lives he so profoundly shaped. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I think one thing, I think this is very deserving. This is well written. Thank you very much. I do want to perhaps just have a little bit of time to hear from the community. And of course, I'm not expecting any issues, but we're representing the community as a whole. So And so we'd like maybe at least a meeting to get some of that input. And then we'll continue to consider this at our next meeting, or if not, the meeting after that.
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
I agree with that. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. You know, it's, I think, a separate discussion for the committee to have. It sounds to me that Mr. Dana is, like, if you're gonna name that space after someone, he would be at the top of the list of who you would choose. Our policy is a little wonky. It's called the naming of new facilities and spaces, but if you read it, it actually contemplates like this would fall under it. I would like to suggest that the committee get feedback from the community and address this request. And then maybe separately, when we do not have a pending request in front of us, think about whether we want to put parameters around how we're going to accept requests to name spaces, you know, what that's going to look like, because it's really challenging when we have a request in front of us to then start to think about how do we decide if we want to name a space. So I think we should deal with the theater and Mr. Dana and then come back later in the year. These broader questions.
Can I just, so I would agree with Kate. I think, not that I don't agree, but I think just having gone through this fairly recent field house and kind of all the steps that were taken, again, first step, sure, the committee asking for, some more stuff from the community is a good idea. But I really appreciate Kate is continue the conversation separately on the policy so it doesn't muddy the waters of this particular instance. Because you never want to get into a situation of like, oh no, now we're not gonna name it because, so I appreciate that conversation. I think, when we had the field house name, we started having that level of conversation around issue, we look at how the policy's written, because it is low money. And I think this is just in general, I dealt with this, my previous district too, is like, we need to have some sort of parameters about what we're naming, when we're naming, how frequently we're naming, is it in memoriam, is it not, all those things, so I think that's important stuff. So I want to thank actually putting this forward. I think it's definitely deserving. I think I've only been here a short time, but clearly it's mark on the.
Thank you.
Great.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, the next item is our agenda was amended, and it was for this particular item to be added around the high school performing arts trip to New York City. So we have someone to.
Yes, Colleen Inglis is gonna come up. She came to me, she asked, hey, can we put this on the agenda? It's important. We've done field trips and, knowing that we have to get school committee approval for overnights and timeline's pretty quick turnover. I know January seems like far away, but with any fundraising we need to do, making sure that kids have the permission to submit in time. So I appreciate, and I think Colleen feels, amending the agenda to get this on tonight. So, and, it's obviously in your packet and, what details, and it seems pretty well thought out. I think cost is what it is for a trip like this, which I don't think is out of line for New York City. I don't know when the last time we did this. I think it was before I got here a couple of years ago.
2024, so it's every other year.
Okay.
In the performance.
Yes, but anyway, so I just like to say when we have field trips like this, I love when students have the opportunity to live and breathe and touch and feel and really get their hands into experiential learning. And this is one of those field trips we had earlier with Morocco, Spain, and all that, which also I think is just phenomenal. So I generally support these kind of field trips. Well, obviously the school committee. You guys ask what questions you want, and so you're comfortable. Sure, how to answer questions there.
Do you have something that you will tell us about it?
Sure, yeah. So it's an enrichment opportunity for the high school performing arts students. So everyone who's invited is anyone who's in a performing ensemble, drama club, or in a music class that meets during the day. And so they would be going to New York City. We would leave on a Friday morning, January 16th, stay overnight one night, and then come back late Saturday night. Some of the highlights are a backstage tour of Radio City Music Hall, a 60-minute Q&A with industry professionals and performers, and then 2 Broadway shows, and also a dinner at, Ellen Stardust Diner where the servers are performers. So it is a professional goal as, performing arts staff that we want to expose students to professionals in the industry and see, you know, what life is like. And so I think this is just a really great opportunity for them to see that, and what better place than New York City.
And just before, I failed to mention to colleagues, this is for sharing this role, and I think it's really awesome that she's taking this on. And really, you know, it's not often that first year folks in this kind of role are willing to take on that challenge, so I appreciate that. I just want to make that, and it's important to recognize. That's it.
Yeah, unfortunately, Jen couldn't be here tonight, but I know in previous requests like this, John, she you asked the same question around insurance. And how is that dealt with this particular trip?
So, students and families have the opportunity to sign up for trip insurance. It's you know, it's given to them should they choose to do it. And it's, all of that trip protection should, you know, they become ill or for whatever reason, and then they can get that. Yes, all part of, we're using the travel company, Bob Rogers, that I know Marblehead has used for quite a few trips, and they provide us with all of that, as part of the package.
I was also told at a previous trip or request like this, there was some concern around the amount of students in a room. And what is the plan for this trip?
Okay, so, as of right now, the plan is to do a quad occupancy, so students have a room with 2 queen beds. And they will be giving us some feedback as far as who they would like to room with, and then the teachers will kind of get together and use that as puzzle to kind of put it all together. To make sure the students are comfortable with the people who they're rooming with.
I had a question about the trip is open to 50 students. So then what's your ratio of chaperones to students?
10-1. So we have 5 chaperones. Mhm.
And that's, okay, that's a issue. Especially for high school. I'll let you.
Yeah.
Right, so this is something we need to vote on, so we will need a motion in a second around approving this trip.
I'll make a motion to approve performing arts field trip to New York City in January of 2026. I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, on the motion made by Kate and seconded by Melissa, all in favor? All right, the motion passes 4-0.
Thank you so much.
It's tight.
You had my vote when you said New York City is a great place to be. You can't guess where I'm from.
Sounds like.
All right, our next item is the superintendent evaluation. Should I get them going in the right order here? So at a previous meeting, we finished the superintendent's evaluation and voted unanimously to approve it. So I'm going to read the major portions of the evaluation into the record. Okay. So just so folks know, we follow a process that both MASC or MASC and DESE recommend. And this is an end of cycle summative evaluation report, and this document is a composite of all the 5 members of the school committee. So where I'll start is with the specific goals that we had for our superintendent. The student learning goal was around ensuring that students have a voice in their teaching and learning. This particular item, the committee marked him as met. The professional practice goal of establishment of a consistent district-wide culture and development of appropriate staffing patterns to meet the needs of our students. We marked the superintendent as some progress. I should have stated, I'll go into some detail as to why those ratings were done the way they were. And then the last goal was a district improvement goal. Massachusetts requires the establishment and implementation of a district improvement plan for public schools in 3-year increments. The DIP is sometimes referred to as a strategic plan. We marked the superintendent as met. So there's performance standards as part of this process. There's 4 somewhat broad categories around instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture. And the committee marked the superintendent as proficient in those 4 areas. So the overall rating for our superintendent is proficient. And now I'll just talk about, a part of this process and form is that we provide comments. And so this to me is one of the most important parts. It's a little long, so please bear with me. So we made comments on each of the goals that I discussed, and then we had a kind of a summary comment section. So around the goal of establishing a consistent district-wide culture, we all noted that, as noted in his self-assessment, Superintendent John Robideau made partial progress towards this goal during the evaluation period. While some steps were taken to address staffing patterns, a comprehensive district-wide approach to developing and implementing consistent staffing practices was not fully achieved. Notably, compiling concrete staffing data remains a critical tool to inform and drive the fiscal year 27 budget process. Central administration is functioning as a team. John's direct reports speak very well of his management style. Around the district improvement goal of creating a district improvement plan, and that would cover years 25 through 28. Superintendent John Robideau has initiated the development of the district improvement plan, with completion expected by this winter and a formal presentation in the school committee for approval. The expected date of implementation is July 1st of 2026. Plan currently has a structured outline, and John is actively engaged as direct reports to inform its construction. Ongoing and robust stakeholder input, including from the school committee, remains essential to ensure the plan's relevance and effectiveness. Additionally, the identification and use of appropriate data metrics will be critical for measuring the plan's outcomes throughout its implementation. Continued focus on these areas will strengthen the impact and sustainability of the improvement plan. So I think John, I'd stated that was 25 through 28. It's 26 through 29.
Yeah, I think I originally did the goal, I was trying to be real. Okay. Trying to get it done early, but.
All right, and the last student was around the student goal, and that was ensuring that students have a voice in their teaching and learning. So the superintendent devoted significant attention to this goal as part of his broader effort to cultivate a district culture of openness and listening. This commitment was reflected by building principals who demonstrated their progress in this area during spring presentations to the school committee. While some principals embraced student voice initiatives more fully than others, the district made meaningful strides overall. The building principals are looking to continue to increase opportunities for student voice in this 25-26 school year, which is evidence of his success in implementing this goal. All right, so the overall summary. This evaluation reflects an assessment of Superintendents John Robideau, who served both as an interim and for a short time as the permanent superintendent of schools. John entered the Marblehead School District during a period of significant turmoil, culminating in a teacher strike. Throughout this challenging time, John demonstrated professionalism, calmness, integrity, and diplomacy. He was placed in the difficult position of supporting the school committee in contract negotiations as the leader of the administration team, while also working to establish a productive professional relationship with the union leadership. His efforts in balancing these responsibilities are commendable. Following the strike, John worked diligently to reunite staff and students, refocus the district on teaching and learning, and prioritized academic rigor and student achievement. His steadfast commitment to the district and its students in the face of extraordinary circumstances is greatly appreciated. We are grateful for John's willingness to commit to the district with a long-term contract, and I applaud his leadership. We applaud his leadership during this period of transition and recovery. John's commitment to strengthening district culture and climate is evident in his establishment and leadership of the superintendent's anti-discrimination committee. This effort directly responded to a specific demand from the school community to address anti-Semitism in the district and is a model for superintendents across the Commonwealth. John does an excellent job of working to build relationships with the district, within the district, and his moving forward together motto demonstrates his understanding of the importance of repairing and rebuilding trust among stakeholders. John is a very agreeable superintendent, frequently saying that his administration will make it work. John could advocate more directly for what he believes is in the best interest of the district. School committee members can then rely on his professional expertise to inform their decision-making. In conclusion, it is important that John builds upon the district's practices around data-driven decision-making to equip administrators, school committee members, and other advocates and stakeholders to explain and justify the district's needs. Take a sip of water after that. So, John, do you have any comments or questions
Yeah,
around this evaluation?
Sure, I'll keep it brief. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee. I mean, you know, I've mentioned this is the fourth iteration of my committee since I've been here, a year ago, July, and it's been, you know, challenging to kind of make sure that we're all working together and making sure that we're supported. I'm feeling supported, which I have, which is, it helps in this role, right, to have support, school community members. So I want to thank you for that. I think, this was challenging. I'm sure it's challenging for me because new members on, and you know, Mial's really the one who's been here since I've been here, kind of thing. So I do appreciate the thoughtfulness going into the evaluation where I'm really not diving stuff, all the things I've done with our team. So I appreciate that, and I think for me, the point's not lost that I was interim for most of this goal period. And you know, fully superintendent from July forward. So I think when we get to the next part of the meeting, we're going over my goals. I think that's be more reflective of kind of the work that we've done as a committee together and establishing your goals moving forward. And I think the part that will come out that I'm excited about is when we sat down and did my goals. There was a lot of good feedback, input, discussion about what you wanted to see. And I think I mentioned in that meeting, just on the tail end of this, is I've been a superintendent for 10 years, and that was the first time I ever had that level of conversation with any iteration of any school committee I've had. So I wholeheartedly appreciate the discussion and really saying, because now I know what the committee will be looking for. Instead of guessing, and that's always really challenging to guess what they really looking for. So all said and done, after the evaluation, I think it aptly it explains what I've done so far in districts, and moving forward, I think that would for staying in. Thank you so much.
Any other comments?
Just looking forward to next year, coming here.
Great. Thank you for everything you've done. Agree, continue to later today.
All right, also, we're going to talk now about the superintendent's goals. Also in the previous meeting, the superintendent presented draft goals for November of this year through May of 2027. We discussed the following goals with a plan for the superintendent to return tonight with revisions. So a student learning goal focused on using data to measure academic achievement and student growth. A district improvement goal focused on hiring, developing, and retaining high-quality educators and other employees. A second district improvement goal focused on communicating stakeholders and the broader community about the creation, approval, and implementation of the district improvement plan. And then a professional practice goal focused on strengthening our principals as the instructional leaders of their buildings. So it's important to note that, you know, we will regularly visit these goals to ensure we're making progress and to make appropriate revisions as we learn more and as time progresses. So the committee provided initial feedback to the superintendent at a productive workshop that we had this past Monday. And so, John, are you ready to further discuss?
Sure. I think it'd be important just to kind of go through the goals that you just mentioned, just and I think I tweaked what I thought was reflective of the meeting we had on Monday, and clearly I'm open to further tweaking if needed, but let me just go through it because I think it's important for folks at home and watching to know what my goals are. So the professional practice goal, again, further development of building administrators as the instructional leaders of their schools in alignment with district-wide expectations for increased rigor and cohesive practices pre-K to 12. Principals and instructional leaders of their schools and as such need to ensure practices within their individual buildings are meaningful and aligned with district expectations, that all students' instructional needs are being met. In a district that has 5 buildings operating, it is important for those buildings to operate cohesively and not in silos. This goal is meant to ensure that there is collaboration, communication, and alignment of instructional practices both vertically across all grades and horizontally grades pre-K to 3. Embedded in enhancing the instructional leadership of our building administrators is the expectation increased rigor is developed to meet the high expectations from our public schools. It's kind of the summary of that goal. Why did I choose the goal? In the absence of cohesive expectations, discussions, and collaboration, school building administrators sometimes have a tendency to operate their buildings myopically. And I think this is not done intentionally, but it's something that transpires organically. And the goal is chosen in an attempt to ensure that there's a cohesiveness across the district in regard to educational language used, instructional practices that are research-based and substantially similar between buildings, and that all students have a pathway from pre-K to 12 that is aligned, and so transitions between grades, between buildings can be more seamless, And that's important. That's an area that I think a lot of districts struggle with, going from building to building, grade level to grade level. This is especially important with the shift in responsibilities for curricular alignment, oversight, and training shifted from the previous employed curriculum directors to lead teachers and instructional coach model that is currently in place. Building principals are charged with ensuring that all aspects of instruction are managed accordingly and in alignment with district expectations, as well as helping to determine resources, professional development, and support needed for educators to effectively provide academic and social emotional instruction to our students. So that's the main reason I chose the goal. And then some of, the measurement of some of these goals, it's always difficult sometimes when, things aren't super tangible, like numbers and stuff easy to quantify sometimes, but this is how I'm open to measure it and I'm open to more feedback. This goal will be measured in part by surveys administered to staff regarding the input into the effectiveness of each building principal as an instructional leader. Implementation of instructional learning walks by principals in each other's buildings would be a way to create meaningful conversation, feedback, and sharing of ideas at our bi-weekly administrative meetings. This data will help inform the focus of instructional leadership, encourage collaboration, and help establish cohesive practices. So that's one of those areas where it's more discussion, some anecdotal, but it's really meaningful that we can have those conversations. This is also a shared evaluation goal for each principal, so the success of the goal will be measured by ensuring that I effectively evaluate each principal based upon them providing schedules, feedback forms, and any data collected throughout the year along with conversations and anything that's on those learning walks and in discussions from the surveys. What will be the evidence? Evidence of meeting this goal will be the administration and review of staff surveys, along with the completion of scheduled learning walks by each principal, by sharing of their experiences within our bi-weekly administration meetings, and by providing feedback regarding instructional practices throughout the district, as indicated with each principal's educator evaluation. Timeline for the goal: each principal will schedule at least 2 learning walks at each other's buildings between October and June, and each bi-weekly administrative meeting principals will share experiences of the instructional learning walks so that there can be more in-depth analysis by the administration team of our shared practices. By the end of the school year, each principal will have done an instructional learning walk at each other's building twice and shared feedback, insights, and thoughts with the team. By the end of January, each principal will have met with me to provide mid-year progress on this goal, and by June, feedback will be provided as part of each principal's educator evaluation. Staff surveys will be administered in the spring, and the feedback will be reviewed and shared with each principal, which will help inform areas of strength and identify areas of growth, while also assisting with providing a basis for establishing future goals. I did this in my previous district, and there's some uncomfortability sometimes on the part of principals on their staff surveying, but however, in conversations, it makes for a more cohesive school because, we can hear feedback, we talk about it, we say, how do, based on that feedback, how are you going to develop your goals for the following year? So I think it's really good, it's powerful, and it's good information. And it's not you do the surveys in a way that's not a gotcha, you're always going to develop curves. There's going to be haters and lovers that are in the middle, but really you look at the data and you say what's really shines through as positive and what needs to be looked at for areas of growth. And then connecting the standards and indicators that we talked about. Number 4, I saw this as the main areas: professional culture, 4D, which is continuous learning, and 4E, which is shared vision. And there's discussion. If the committee really asked me to say, how is this connected? Because the goals are one thing, progress of the goals are one thing, but then how are they connected to the standards? So I think this will be better when you guys do my evaluation. The committee does my evaluation. Right? You just want me to follow?
Talk about each one.
Yep. However you like.
I don't really have any, I mean, I think. The comments that we made in the last meeting were addressed really effectively. I think my only question, and it's not really for a revision, but we talked about. And I noticed that you made changes to a bunch of the schools to make them 18 months goals. So that we're sort of resetting the clock on getting those goals kind of an evaluation in June. Is this one 18-month or is this one sort of through June and we'll check in 26?
I mean, I didn't put the 18 months there, probably should have, but just to get them all in the same pathway, so I can still get that.
So they're all the same.
I think so. 'cause I
Okay,
think
that
the
makes sense to me. I just,
Yes.
I had the same
That's
question.
cool.
yeah, I think it's nice.
I don't know that they can help,
I thought you incorporated all of our feedback into this.
I agree. I thought it might help on just kind of globally, where down at the bottom where you have the indicators, maybe you have
what the indicators are.
the completion date, so somewhere kind of easy to find. My only comment I wanted to make tonight is that reflecting on this further after the workshop, I'm a little concerned, I guess, for lack of a better word, that the measurement of this goal is mostly through principal evaluations, which are not something that the school committee has visibility into, but I wonder if we could include something like working into your district updates reports on changes that are made based on the work that you are doing. So things that are strengthening cohesion or improving vertical and horizontal alignment. So while we're not seeing what the reviews are of the principals, we're seeing the tangible changes that are being made.
Yeah, I think that's good, and I think, yeah, I'm happy to incorporate that in there. I think, when we talk about me coming back to the committee and doing, updates on all my goals, I think we talked about them being like quarterly. So it's not, everything at the end or not so spread out that you forget all we talk about. But yeah, so I think organically those conversations would happen, but I think, yeah, incorporating them there. What was something that I should do it? You can't do that, I did.
Yeah, next.
Thank you. Was hoping to get all the marks. Thank you for that feedback. Second one, district improvement goals, establishment of practices related to hiring, training, and retention of licensed Marblehead public school educators. This goal is being created to address hiring, training, and retention of licensed educators in Marblehead public schools. I mean, that's clearly gonna also expand retention of other staff, but I really want to focus on the license piece because it's so important to make sure we have properly licensed credentialed people in our classrooms. So I mean, I think organically that's gonna kind of expand on how we retain IAs and everything. So but I didn't want to get too far down a rabbit hole. So sorry. Our goal is to hire engineers, ensure that they are provided appropriate training, support, and resources so that they remain in the district and become part of the fabric of our educational community for an extended period of time. There are many facets of creating school culture in which people want to belong in the school, explore ways in which we can enhance accountability, establish solid educational programming, grow leaders, and provide meaningful and sustainable mentorship and support for new and veteran staff. Why did I choose the goal? Retention of staff is always something that needs to be addressed in any workplace. Marblehead has a reputation for providing high academic standards, but positionality amongst the North Shore communities can inhibit longevity of staff. It is incumbent on the administration to ensure that there is cohesive, collaborative, and meaningful support in place for our educators so that they can manage their learning spaces in the most efficient and effective manner, foster student success. Exploring these factors and determining ways that we can engage our educators more productively is why this goal was established. I'll talk about this a little bit. Some of the exit interviews that I've done over the time I've been here, I always ask for exit interviews, some people are well doing, some people aren't. And many of them, without getting into leave for disruptive reasons, but many people, it's really, I mentioned the positionality because it is a real thing. It's like, I can't get tomorrow right unless I'm on this side of Salem, on this side of Swampscott. So it is a reality. It's not the only piece by far, but it is a factor. So I just thought that was important to mention. How I measure the goal, will be measured and done through oversight of the HR department's specific tracking of hiring from year to year and by providing opportunities for and tracking of exit interviews for staff that leave the district. Data collected will help establish trends and inform hiring and retention practices. Reviewing data from our professional development committee will assist in tracking the training that is being provided and will help to ensure that the training is helpful to make meaningful gains in retention of our educators. We will measure the success of this goal in part by a decreased amount of departures of licensed educators throughout the next 18 months. And I think, to your point, we may have the same feedback for this, so I'm gonna try to jump on it first. I mean, when I do my updates, we can have those conversations, like how much staff have left, how much staff have stayed. If you had exit interviews, how many and what they say, to the extent that I can share that, I think that'll be helpful. So evidence of meeting this goal will be creation of a systemic tracking system, which I don't think really exists in a meaningful way. I mean, I can, probably have two left, but it's been tricky for us to kind of manage that. I think we're in a much better place now than we were a year ago. So I'm excited about that. And development of exit interview processing by collecting data related to the hiring and departure of staff throughout the district. I think that's the main pieces of this goal. Over the next 18 months, systems will be created and implemented so that by the end of the school period, hiring and retention practices will be in place that are meaningful and tangible. The data collected from our professional development committee throughout the next year and a half will assist in ensuring that the goal is met in time. So I think it's a cloud effort. Just a lot of things we have to look at, but retention really hinges on the professional development. So the other piece I'll say to exit interviews is, and a lot of conversation we had is, we only have more training, or if we had more training in that specific area, or, it was great that we did this training, but then we didn't have like follow-up or it wasn't embedded. So all those things are really tricky, but it's a good conversations to have, and Julia loves the professional development stuff, and I think, it's helpful to have those conversations, because, when you look at PD, we have like some awesome speaker that comes in and talks to everybody, and it's like, oh, I'm so energized, this is great, and then 3 days later, they're like, oh. It's so to have that embedded to me is great. And there's a lot of that going on. And again, when I do updates, we'll share some of those really solid things. That's not something I would necessarily outline in the goal specifically, but when I do updates, I will. Instructional leaders. So the areas are instructional leadership under data informed decision making, management operations, and the HR management and development, and professional culture, commitment to high standards and shared vision. Those are the ones that we're plugging into this goal. Happy to have any more feedback on this one as well. Questions?
It was kind of a general statement of like enhancing. You aim to enhance practices, but you don't define what enhancement is. I wonder if you should put a stake in the ground for trying to a certain percent decrease in people leaving for voluntary reasons or something very specific to aim towards, even if it's lofty. I really like this goal, though. I think it's super important.
Yeah.
And one that we really need to have our eyes on.
Yeah, and I was happy that this, because I, just for folks at home, I left kind of one of the goals open for that kind of discussion, so I was really happy that the school committee kind of came up with, hey, why didn't we look at this, because it's there. I can certainly look at that and see if I can, something that makes sense, I think.
No problem if not, but.
Because I think that's good feedback. I kind of go back to my special ed training. Sometimes when you put percent, like say if you put a percentage in an IEP, is it just for the sake of putting a percentage in there? Is it a real thing? And I just want to make sure if it's something that makes sense.
Understanding our baseline,
Yeah.
we know that we're
Yeah.
coming in better than what our current
Yeah,
state is.
yeah. Okay, let me think about that. Is there any crafts into that would be a problem.
Am I remembering right that there's data that we report to DESI on attrition or some retention? So that could be someplace to look at it, what the baseline is or has been.
Just need to improve it.
Yeah. It's
I was just gonna say, yeah, it speaks a little to me of being a little more proactive too, right? A lot of times when people write these type of goals, it's always people leaving and why they're leaving, which is important to understand, but I think also how do we market, how do we market ourselves when we're looking for new people and, the front part is just as important, right, as all the other parts, so.
It's similar to you look at, student transition, right? So we're having those, we have to have those conversations a little bit more too, like students going from one school to another. How can you celebrate the next school? So kids are excited about it. So for instance, 8th graders coming to the high school, how do we celebrate that and bring, teachers and staff like can talk to the kids, and we can do the same kinds of things with each, like, I think a lot of, or, you know, some districts do it, we do some of this, but like, how do we have teachers kind of visit each other's classrooms in different buildings, and even offer them the ability to go to other districts and see what's happening in practices. Those kind of things help sometimes say, I don't wanna go to that district, and you lose it, but most of the time, if you frame it correctly, it's good because they see other things that happen, we want to replicate it. Sure. And I think that's important as well, so that I can leave.
I have a couple comments, one sort of feeding on what Al just said. In the summary or description, you say our goal is to hire educators. And I think we can aim higher than that. You know, our goal is to hire high performing or highly qualified educators and it's in the first.
Oh, the summary,
The
yes,
important summary is very top, yeah.
yeah, that's,
And I like this goal a lot, and I agree that it's just so important. And we,
highly qualified, so highly qualified.
yeah, something along those lines. And we talk so much about using data to make decisions, and I think that this is gonna be a great way to have some more data around hiring and retention and, you know, away hopefully a little bit from anecdotal, you know, information influencing decisions. I don't think this needs to go into your goal, but one thought I had was that I wondered if, in addition to the PD committee, the PLCs might be a place where you could sort of less formally gather information
That's
about
with the
what our
mentor
staff
program
needs.
too, I should have mentioned that, you know, mentor.
All these different groups.
Right. Third goal is the district improvement plan, and I mean, I won't go too far into this because it's just really the continuation of development and implementation of the district improvement plan. I did change the dates to 26-29. It's like I said, I was trying to be a little bit too far reaching. Just for overarching, you know, the district improvement plan right now is being based on our student plan for success, which is slated to fruition next year. So we have to get the district improvement plan in place by then. It's generally supposed to run 3 years, so that we can consistently review it and everything else. So where I am, I've done a lot of the input from central administration and everything else, principals, other administrators in the district. And then my next, so I finished integrating that, and my next is to push out the staff, get their input, integrate that, push it out to parents and caregivers, integrate that. Maybe students at the high school, I'm kind of going vacillating on that. It's because it's a very broad, you know, very, like, there's a lot of information in there that they may not understand, not that they don't understand, they may not know how to give the feedback to it because it's just really a lot of operational stuff, but there may be some value in some of the areas, so I'm gonna kind of think about that a little bit more, and then, obviously, once I do all that, bring that back to the committee so you can review it, and then we'll talk about whatever else needs to get done. I think I shared this before, I've done it this way in the past, and it's worked out really well because I get hundreds of stakeholders versus like 14 of us sitting in a meeting going, oh, I think we should do this. So I think it's really beneficial and helpful. It's a lot of work. That's why, you know, it's taking me a little while to kind of get it together, but you know, what we've done. I'm hoping to get this to the committee, obviously, back, you know, early spring, so we can get it voted and in place. And then my bigger thing is when you do a district improvement plan, it'll just get done and put on a shelf, gets done, and then we consistently look at it and review it. In a lot of ways that happens is through the principals doing the school improvement, their school improvement plans with their SACs and their staff and everything. Because they have to look and they have to make sure their school improvement plans dovetail with the district improvement plan. And that's where you start seeing like, oh yeah, we need to work on that, or we worked on that, and we kind of completed that, with the next step. So a lot of places just do it, stick it on the shelf, say pull it back out again 3 years later, and start over. Realistically, our school improvement plans won't dovetail with this new one this coming year because it's so aligned to the student success plan. However, we have had conversations, so this should start to see some overlap. Next year, they'll be fully dovetailed, the following year, same, but then we're start working on the next one. So it's really, it's a 3-year plan, but you really get like a year and a half before you start looking at it. So anyway, I think that's kind of an overarching thing. This was really my goal from before. I did add in the standards and indicators, instructional leadership, around instruction, data informed decision making, management operations, the environment, fiscal systems, the top ones that I thought were connected. Family and community engagement, obviously engagement and communication. Professional culture would be committed to high standards and shit. I'm happy to have anything else in there, but like, that's a continuation of the rule, so. Actually, all the way out.
Yeah, I like that we're gonna have a chance to sort of take another look at this goal in, in next year. Once the plan is in place, that we can get to say, oh, well, what's, like you said, how are you gonna follow up on the plan and work that into the goal, at least with a quicker way.
Yeah, I can do what you can say, you do it to this, I can do that in addition to, so that's not atypical. And sometimes maybe don't need to hear part of it, but like, where are we with the professional development, so the HR piece, because the HR piece would dovetail really nicely with what we just talked about, so those kind of things that I think we look at. Right, you okay for,
Yeah, John, I think I said this at a previous meeting, but if I look at, how to measure the goal, it goes before a lot of people and entities. And the school committee is almost very near the end. And I'd like to, and again, this isn't a trust issue, and I, certainly don't want to have meetings for the sake of having meetings. But I still would like to see the school committee involved a little sooner. And just because I hate for it to get to the end of the process. I don't think this will happen, but it's possible, right? With how this is laid out, that we get to the end and there's something the school committee really has an issue with, and then what do? Do you go back to all the previous entities? So if there's just a way to, involve us, during the process versus near the end. I
so
appreciate
what if I did this, and this is this is an easy pivot, so once I finish integrating all the information I have now. And send it out to staff, maybe when I send out to staff, give it to you as well at the same time, so you can start, I mean, I provided the draft to you already, so you can start, but maybe at that point, I'll have the rest of the input and feedback from the administration team in there, and then sort of you'll be seeing it same time the staff see it, and then there's some step at that point. And then we'll get it back again, and at least you're in the middle of the process, and then again at the end, would that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, first. So we just. We need staff. Yeah, we can pause it immediately, just kind of go through it and then. Thank you. Last goal would be the student learning goal, identifying meaningful ways to assess and enhance / improve students' academic achievement and social emotional growth, PK to 12. It is incumbent upon administrators to ensure that we have ways to assess student achievement and growth beginning in early grades and carrying through graduation. In the absence of MCAS as a graduation requirement, it is even more important that we address ways to ensure students are meeting standards and that their achievement is accurately documented in multiple ways. Over the next 18 months, I will work with administrators, data team members, or instructional coaches, etc. Let's just to name a few, to cut pertinent student data, focusing on areas of strength and identifying areas of growth and development in order to ensure that district assessments are providing meaningful data, affect positive student achievement and growth, along with ensuring that the district has the appropriate assessment tools in place. This goal will also explore ways to ensure that the curriculum, materials, and resources are supported by our budget and are implemented with the proper training for educators. So that was something that was really important. And I came up with our discussion too, is it's great when we have curriculum materials and everything else, but if we're not providing training alongside it, it's, kind of really false, right? And we need to make sure that we have the budgets to support the materials and resources. Why do we choose this goal? Educators are generally good at knowing where the student strengths and areas of growth lie. However, having specific measures of academic achievement and social emotional growth is important to ensuring that students' outcomes are aligned with our high expectations. And it's important to share with our educational community stakeholders the ways in which student growth and achievement is measured, what tools we're using across the district, and how those tools are chosen and utilized. It's equally important to ensure that the budget supports the curriculum, assessments, training, and resources required for educators to successfully implement programming and assessments across the district. The school will be measured by review and sharing of data derived from district assessments, including but not limited to DIBELS, iReady, so have the IXL, MCAS, and common assessments, meetings and discussions with administrators, that team members, guidance, instructional coaches will help to inform the data collection and review process. And I'm sure Julia will have a lot of other groups that will provide data for us. Her case. Professional development is key, especially when new curriculum materials, assessments are implemented, so ensuring that feedback from educators regarding the PD provided will help measure effectiveness of the school. Student outcomes on assessments will measure the success of the school based upon comparisons of previous assessments, peers, and how our students compare to similar districts. Heard that, yeah. What evidence, will be demonstrated the meeting of the school. Evidence towards this achievement of the school will be provided through the data gathered from the aforementioned assessments, through data teams and input from administrators, assessment results, and ongoing conversations with coaches and building-based educators and administrators. Utilizing scores on AP exams, SATs, ACTs, and assessments of special education students will also be an important evidence toward the completion of the school. Comparing student growth year over year in comparison to similar districts will be a way to measure the success of the assessment tools, curriculum material, resources provided, and student achievement moving forward. The timeline for the goal data can often review from assessments throughout the year and be reported to the school committee quarterly. Report cards, progress monitoring, and state district assessments results will be provided by benchmarks as well. Over the course of the next 18 months, I will ensure that there will be cohesive research-based assessments provide student achievement data that will highlight areas of strength and areas of growth that will be continual addressed. So I gotta change all I said. Standards and indicators, instructional leadership. I see, or 1C is assessment, 1D is instruction, 1E is data informed decision making, and then also management and operations. 2C is scheduling in management information systems. I have most of we talked about there, and I'm happy to receive any feedback and what.
I'm excited about this one. I think we've got a lot to do on our own sort of school committee goals related to this. So.
Yeah. I had one sort of thought when I looked at it the second time today, which is I wonder whether, since it's an 18-month goal, it might warrant almost breaking it up into two components, and having the first part be figuring out what the data is and the time of year when that data is going to be most useful. It's almost coming up with a plan for the data. And then the second component would be actually, coming and giving those reports. You could probably do like a hybrid of those two things over the course of this year, and then set us up for next school year to be, ready in September with like a first year of all the data we're gonna look at.
Yeah, I think, I will certainly rely on my assistant superintendents to provide on those timeframes.
Mhm.
They just really know that. I think that's important, in between, the teaching around department and the student service department, they can kind of frame some of that, help frame some of that. So, some people. Sure.
Okay, if you notice on the agenda, it was vote next to this, but it doesn't make sense because we've given you some edits. And I also believe, I want to be respectful to Jen and make sure that she has a chance to comment.
Whatever works. I can make the edits, bring back to the next meeting, and then we can do more discussion. If Jen were here, I would probably suggest to vote based upon that as talked about and.
Because they're not being, but I just, and it's public document now too, so Jen can provide some comments. And then I hope at the next meeting we'll be able to go. So can you be okay with
Them
that?
all again. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, I think at that point, you just make sure that updates we talked about, and then,
Yeah, Jen is on.
they chime in on it. I'm sure she has some thoughts on some of the things we talked about. Yeah, happy to do that. Another meeting or two, something. Thank you. Again, I just want to say I wholeheartedly feel good about this process, and I think it's going to help solidify my leadership in my practices and help me to help, other district administrators to enhance their practices, so. Support's been great. I see appreciate that honor and time, I was gonna say, honestly, but I do that work.
We will move on to school committee goals. And so at a previous meeting, we discussed 6 potential goals that were drafted and presented by members. And then also last Monday, the workshop, we agreed that the members would refine and edit 3 of these goals and present in tonight's meeting. So Henry, why don't we start with you?
I don't, I did kind of type some stuff up. I'll share it, but I
You brought prints,
I did bring printouts, and I used the same format that John used for his goals. I don't have one for everybody, but. So this goal is around decision making and data storytelling. I am excited about the potential for this goal because of the superintendent's goals seem really well aligned with it. I think he's and his team are going to be building a lot of tools that he should take advantage of. You know, and we had such a successful presentation with the MCAS data that was more storytelling than just here's the numbers. You know, 3 of John's goals have the data informed decision focus area. So I try to focus this more on what are we doing with that information, you know, are we gathering information? I did sort of propose in here that there was some things we could do to build, you know, if we wanted to explore a dashboard to see this, but I think that that's probably more John's business than ours. But I think one thing that we should focus on is, you know, establishing a cadence for the government for this data or anyone else to come, because again, we have a whole lot of success with the invest data. And to be able to report the data that's driving our decisions and doing that both in this meeting and in conversation with the community and the district. And sort of developing tools that we need to send out that information, including possibly surveys or ways that we can gather our data about, you know, back or community interests. That's going to help guide our decision making rather than just making decisions based on this. So did sort of highlight some, it's tricky without January. I don't want to make some decisions about the goals, but I did highlight some stages that we can check off to sort of to demonstrate that we're meeting the goal. I think a lot of the success of this goal is if John achieves success in his data-driven goals. And I think for the timeline, there's sort of 2 stages to it. So one would be establishing the cadence for data and what that looks like, or what it looks like for what data to the community. And then sort of at the end of this process, have we demonstrated that we're using data to drive decisions? Do we have numbers in those meetings? When we share the decisions that we've made, are we providing the community? Here's why our data. So there's a lot of words on here, but I'm interested in your feedback and where this needs to go to continue the conversation with them.
And I just had a quick question. So this was the compilation of goals 1, 2, and 3? From
Yes, it
the
was
original
kind of an
6?
evolution.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Which is what I think we were
Yeah.
asking for, is, you
Yeah.
know, like, there was a lot of overlap and similarity. So I just wanted to make sure that I had that I was taking those first 3 goals.
that's right, because they were goals around data and communications. And I think the most important thing that we have to communicate is the data and the data storytelling. So this sort of encompasses both improving our communication tools and that doing something that's like.
Yeah, just in terms of the process, I think it's similar to what we just went through with the superintendent's goals, that it wouldn't make sense to vote on it because we're just seeing this, right, for the first time. So I think we need to kind of digest it potentially. And also
Yeah, and I think
Jen's input.
absolutely, I don't expect.
And I think this is well done. I think we're very, well, I'll wait on that part, but I think, we're very close to finalizing our goals.
I think this starts to tackle the real question that we're gonna face, which is now that we have all this data, what are we doing with it? So I think this is, to me, sort of like the first step in figuring that out. Where are we sharing it? What are we using it for? Those sorts of questions.
The word data is so broad. Are we talking about like student outcomes data? Like,
So I
because a
think,
lot of the decisions we make are not necessarily big. The committee are not necessarily numbers specific.
you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, I think I did sort of identify some of the resources, and I'm talking about for the most part, existing resources, not things that we need to build and see that. And it was all the stuff that John and then Gene has,
Yeah.
you know. And I think he also was talking about, I added in my notes sort of the staff retention data that John mentioned, that I think is. It's different from academic success, but it is important. And then, you know, there are surveys that go out. I think we need to empower ourselves to send out our own surveys that are more specific to the school community. Just the district. And again, like, we just need to, but we don't have the tools to distribute those. Like, sort of the districts.
Any other questions, comments?
I like it.
I'll refine it and bring it. to-
Data means nothing without the story, so.
Yeah, I agree. I was really energized by the MCAS. So.
All right, Melissa?
I didn't bring printouts, so I'm gonna share my screen. Let's talk about how we want to separate out. Well, maybe there could be overlap with mine and Henry's. Mine is focused on strengthening financial transparency through the lens largely of communication of the budget. So the description is improve how Marblehead community members understand the school budget by providing clear explanations of cost drivers, including teacher contract increases, special ed, circuit breaker funding, enrollment shifts, offering opportunities for dialogue and building trust in how resources are allocated. With the specific goal being to basically successfully implement a structured financial comms plan that measurably increases community comprehension of key budget drivers before our May town meeting. Metrics for success, I think currently the community most folks would say that the budget is complex and we're quite reactive. There's little confidence, I think, in the puts and takes to what's going on. And there's been really limited structured comms, as we saw kind of during what happened last fall. So the target would be to publish at least 3 clear budget explainers. I think the budget subcommittee can work with FinCom. We already have been working with FinCom and Mike and John early in the process to basically just in a very clear, articulate form, whether it's one pagers or public presentations, just lay out in, I think, visuals that are easy for people to comprehend before March 2026, and then to host at least 2 community forums dedicated to Q&A. I think having those conversations earlier next year, ahead of May 2026, where people can ask all the questions that we've kind of been talking about amongst ourselves, and how we're going to start to build that trust, and to be able to answer some of the questions that we know folks in the community are asking each other and wondering about, with really the intent of addressing kind of ongoing repeated funding requests. When we know we have declining enrollment and the contractual obligations in front of us. So the intent would be basically 2 checkpoints in January, at least one kind of explainer published at that point, and one form completed, and then basically everything completed ahead of town meeting. With the owners of this really being budget for the most part, but within consultation, communications subcommittee.
I really like this goal. I just think that, in my mind, a really important responsibility that the school committee has around the budget is to help the community understand it. And why it's built the way it is, and why our needs are what they are, and I think this will help.
Mike has already done a great job of just like outlining everything that's going on. It's really, in my mind, like packaging and presentation explanation exercise.
Anything else?
So to support it.
Yeah. Well done. Thank you. Kate?
Well, I So what I did is I took the goal that was sort of around supporting the superintendent in completing the district improvement plan, and expanded it a little bit and turned it into a strategic planning goal. And I laid it out this way because all the different rubrics that we were using. So the goal would be to refocus school committee efforts on high-level district oversight and strategic planning in a way that supports the operational work and priorities of our administrators. And I propose doing this in 3 sort of parts or steps. The first would be to agree to a statement that articulates a clear division of responsibilities between the school committee and the administration. I attached to the goal a slide that I think MASC showed us at our workshop this summer. If not, it's part of their charting the course presentation that I think does a good job sort of laying out what I'm thinking about here. And my thinking with that component of the goal is we're setting our expectations for ourselves, what our responsibilities are, and holding ourselves to that. The next component of the goal would be to support John in completing the district improvement plan by setting a near-term deadline for school committee review of the draft, establishing a timetable, which he does in his goal, to gather and process stakeholder input, and then monitoring that we're meeting that timetable, and then reviewing and approving the finalized plan in the spring of 2026 for implementation. And then the real meat of the goal is this last section, which is to consider strategic planning frameworks for the district moving forward, with clearly articulated responsibilities for the school committee in that process. As I think I mentioned at the workshop, this is really what I've been wanting to do this year, and we just sort of haven't been ready. So my thinking around this is either appointing someone on the committee to take the lead on this, or putting together an ad hoc subcommittee that can run with it. Exploring what guidance NAFC has to offer, and really working to put together a plan for the school committee on how we are going to do both short and long-term strategic planning and oversight moving forward. So I would love it if we can launch the district improvement plan in the summer, along with a plan for what the school committee is going to do over the course of a year to fulfill its strategic and broad planning responsibilities.
Really like this. It's so important.
I think what you haven't actually stated runs through it is sort of longevity and setting up future school committees with the framework to continue to do this. Which I think is important for the whole.
I'm actually thinking that sort of a plan that could be created and then get embedded in that like year-long agenda that we approved at the beginning of this year, and even maybe like put a little more meat on those bones around what the school committee is doing at different touch points throughout the year.
And sort of like just the visual on it.
Yes. Any goals about visually, yeah, so. One thing I'm still,
You go.
so,
Hopefully.
so Kate, is this just what was goal 6, or is it,
Yeah, it was just that one.
so the elevating of educator voices and perspectives in school?
Yeah, I didn't.
So do
We could either also consider that one still. I
Okay.
didn't do any further development. I couldn't
so it's still in play,
figure out how it would work into this one.
and I don't think we were necessarily asking that they
Yeah.
had. Okay, we still should consider it as one of our goals, okay?
I think one thing I would add to this is the challenge that this goal is meeting is not as clear, I think, as sort of the budget challenge or the, data challenge. And I'm wondering if just to communicate this goal, and it would be good to sort of have the challenge stated. What are we trying to meet with this goal?
Do my math right, we have four goals, right, presently in front of us with these edits.
If we're including the,
If we're still doing that elevating.
Right,
Mhm.
assuming, right, still doing the educated voices, okay? All right.
I guess my question that, and this is something that agenda, right, is are these goals well aligned? Are to the responsibilities, the way that, like, especially the ones, I think they are, I just think it's important to show how. Like, maybe that's part of the goal that you're developing is to be able to show how those goals align to our responsibilities. And what's ours and what's Jones.
I also think that if you look at examples of other districts, places that are doing this really well, the school committee goals actually flow into the district improvement plan, which flows into the school. So it's really like we're up here saying this is where we want to go, and all those other things are getting us there. So. Yes, 2 years from now.
This is a process.
No, I'm very excited about it, because they're. There's not slam dunks there, I think they follow the SMART framework. I also think they're pushing us in places that we haven't necessarily been as much as we should have. And we may not meet all these, but I think they're very, very good goals for us to try to attain, so. Earlier I said, maybe we don't vote on this tonight. I just want to verify what the will of the committee is around this. Wait for that, or do we vote on?
I'm down to vote.
I think what we had discussed at the workshop was potentially voting them tonight and then having some additional work done to, beef them up where that we felt that was necessary, so, to keep the ball rolling, we could vote them with an expectation of.
Yeah, just we first talked about it like a month ago, this one, I'm just hesitant to say it's on.
It's there, it's there.
I mean, John's goals are a little further along than ours, and I think it's important to. Like, sort of keep pace with him, and so voting these goals in, and. I'm not saying that, well, we can come down with provisions and that you have like, let's look at all of it. Are we voting that for?
Yeah, oh, yeah, he's the one.
Was that hasn't,
No,
yeah, I don't, yeah. I think it was.
motion,
I will make a motion to approve. For school committee goals. The data-driven decision-making and communication goal that was presented tonight. The budget explainer,
Financial transparency.
the financial transparency goal that was presented tonight. The strategic planning goal that was presented tonight. And then the goal from our October 15th meeting of elevating educator voices.
Oops, second.
right, so we had a motion made by Kate, seconded by Henry. All those in favor? Right, the motion passes 4-0. Our next item is an update on the Piper Field lighting proposal to the CDA.
So I think everyone on the committee is aware, that we've been working to increase the number of nights per year that the lights can be used at Piper Field. John, sorry, I'm losing my voice. John presented a request to the planning board on behalf of the school committee, and that request was approved by a planning board vote at its October 14th meeting. But we're awaiting the written decision of the planning board. And my understanding is that that can take up to 90 days. The next step in the process is that we need to go before the zoning board of appeals to request an amendment to the conditions within ZBA decisions that were issued in 2013 and 2000. And the process of doing that is to submit an application to the ZBA. Those application deadlines are a few weeks before the scheduled meeting. So the timing here gets complicated, and the ZBA, my understanding is, will not hear our application until the planning board's written decision has been issued. So they want that to be part of what they're looking at when making the decision. So the deadline to apply to be heard at their November hearing has already passed. So realistically, we're looking at December, probably more likely January for us to do this. But my hope was that the committee could vote tonight to approve making the application to the ZBA so that we can get that. Good. So that's. And then the other component of it is that it has been recommended, I know Jen has mentioned a few times that she thinks we should have legal counsel involved in that application process, and the town planner has recommended the same. The law firm that we use for the majority of our work does not do land use. But Tom recommended an attorney. Her name is Megan Paul. She practices at Virgo, Israel and Weiner. And who said that they refer clients there. So I'm certainly open. I haven't made contact with her yet. I don't have a sense of what the rates look like. And I'm certainly open, if committee members or administrators have ideas of other. You know,
So you're looking for a motion. With this CBA. So separate like.
yeah, I can make a motion because I wrote out exactly.
No, okay.
Okay. So the motion would be for the school committee or a designee to submit an application to the zoning board of appeals to amend the conditions of the 2013 and 2000 ZBA decisions to permit the use of the lights at Piper Field until 9 p.m. from mid-August through November, which is approximately 105 nights, and from mid-March through May, which is approximately 75 nights, and to use the PA system for 12 varsity level MIA sanctioned high school contests per year.
Second.
So I'm sorry, I stepped down. So so we're voting on an application that we have not yet filled out. Are all the items you just mentioned part of that application, or is there more
So this is, jump in if I get this wrong, but this is what we applied to the planning board for. And the planning board approved this with some sort of added conditions around monitoring and checking back in a year. It may be that the zoning board imposes those same conditions, but my preference would be for the committee to, the committee's approval to be basically to ask the ZBA for the same thing. From the planning board, in whatever way our attorney tells us we should make that request. So the ZBA decision talks about game nights. So I don't know if we're gonna end up, the request is really gonna be to increase the number of game nights, but the intention being to get ourselves permission to use the lights this number of nights and the PA system.
Yeah, and I think, you know, get that, characterize where we were, so. The difference between the planning board and the zoning board, in my estimation, is one, we have to. We recommend a lawyer to the application, so. It's all tight, buttoned up nicely, and then we go with the same information and provide. Planning board with the, I think when you set that out, I think you start about, we can't do the zoning board planning, zoning board application until we get the written. So, wait for that. So, yeah, I think we're, I think, really forward. I don't know what else is on the board. Planning board, and it seems to. I have an idea about that. There's two decisions. Yeah. And then I just also want to say, we're kind of taking all this and then. A lot of things I should focus on.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is really proving an application that a lawyer will help us with, makes sense. But we will not see,
We could
because we've approved it already. And again, I'd be more comfortable with that if there's really nothing new here and it's a very similar application. That lessens my concern here. I don't know if that's the case. It sounds like it
We wouldn't
is.
be asking for anything different than what we asked the planning board, and already been unanimously approved by the planning board, so it's just really the same information, same. The application process, I don't know if it's more involved, and that's why there needs to be an attorney, I mean, when I went before the planning board, I tried to do all this stuff on my own, and ended up being, I just had to kind of do a letter and, supporting documents to get through the planning board process, which I thought was great. It's a little bit more. But like it was over there. But it's not, in essence, it's the same exact request from changing it.
But we could also amend the motion and have the report back to the committee once the application is kind of prepared. Yeah, if you're concerned about really making sure that it.
Yeah, if you're amenable to that, that just enhanced makes it better.
So I will amend my motion.
Any further discussion? All right, so motion made by Kate, seconded by Henry. All in favor? All right, the motion passes 4-0. All right, are there any subcommittee or liaison updates?
I have an update from the facilities, so. Police Marine created a survey. That we're sending out to sort of assess. The demand for early childhood education. And we're trying to make a determination on level of school. By the end of the year, I think is what, John, is that?
Yeah, I think so. We had talked about a feasibility study being done to determine whether or not there's a feasible that we can do it at a school and early childhood center in a discussion. So it's something maybe you talked about really doing a needs assessment first, say, is this something the town really wanted to be needing? That's where Police Marine jumped in and did a survey. So once we get that data, then bring that back to the facility subcommittee and potential next steps we're gonna. a bid into a full feasibility study, because that's. That costs us, I mean, isn't costing us anything, feasible. So, that's kind of overarching piece. Yeah.
We're trying to look at needs going before we make any decision this space. Thank you. Yeah.
Can I just ask who we're surveying?
So at this point, I think there were some suggested changes, but at this point, we are surveying kids or parents who have kids from 0 to 5 to see if they were interested in services, right? What sort of what they would expect out of a preschool program, because in some cases it's things we don't provide.
So presumably the survey is not, it's not just going to the current families, we're gonna find a way to. The broad, it's going.
So that sounds like we're trying to gauge demand. Demand of a potential early childhood center.
I think, yes, I mean. I think before we have any further discussions about sort of what we may want to do at the level of school, we sort of need to determine what Marblehead would.
No, it makes sense, but I'm just wondering, so I heard kind of the survey, hopefully getting some gauge of demand and then the building, the grounds and all that associated with it. And to me, I'd love to see a business plan of which this is a component as part of the feasibility. And I understand a large part of the feasibility would be, the building, what it would take to actually bring it up, whatever it may be, but I don't want to build something if we don't have a business plan around why the building's being renovated.
You're absolutely, I mean, I think this is just a first step to determine if we're even going to make that sort of next step. And there are a lot of other factors in town uses, the multi-use building, there's the 18 to 22-year-old students. And so, yeah, right now, we're just, do we need to go?
Yeah, demand's a good place to start, I guess, right? And that'll, if there's no demand, right, then obviously we don't have to kind of continue with a lot of feasibility studies.
Is the intention that if that survey comes back and says like, we're not interested, then like that is the final data input that we need to say, okay, we're not holding on to this any longer.
Yes, I mean, I don't want to predict survey
Yeah.
results, right? But the goal is, if possible, we want to get this, maybe returning the school or the property to the town on the line for the town meeting.
Yeah.
So that's why we set the deadline of sort of, we're meeting. We're meeting this December 2nd to review the results. And I think we would need to get something on the line. So.
I think it's a good strategy to determine the study. I'm not against it. I like the idea, but I was just want to make sure we're kind of thinking through the process before we start to spend a lot of money. Feasibility study.
If I may, that was kind of the discussion initially, like let's do a feasibility study, because we want to make sure we can use them. Blah, blah, blah. Mike and I did a little bit of early legwork and we kind of had a thought about how much money like a full feasibility study would cost, but we had the conversation switched to let's do a needs assessment first before we spend any money. And then based on a needs assessment, then we decide feasibility study, yes, no for early childhood, or feasibility study for smaller groups that may still be under the auspices of a school or not, and then kind of help to make that decision. So, yeah, really infancy stages, I think.
And I think it's important to note that we all agree that the conversation isn't, we've got a building, what should we do with it? It's, do we have a demand and could this building?
All right, any other updates? Okay, do we have any correspondence? Okay, so I am looking for a motion and vote to meet in executive session for the following reason. will be pursuant to chapter 30A, section 21A3, purpose 3, to discuss litigation. Marblehead School Committee and Marblehead Teachers Association, MEP 25-11555, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the school committee. And the chair so declares without intent to return to open session.
So
Seconded.
Okay, I think we have to do a roll call with this vote. So Kate,
in favor.
Henry,
In favor.
Melissa, Al in favor. All right, so the motion passes 4-0. We will now meet in executive session pursuant to chapter 38, section 21A3, purpose 3, to discuss litigation. Marblehead School Committee and Marblehead Teachers Association, MEP 25-11555, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the school committee, and the chair so declares without intent to return to open session. Okay, no. Executive session will to the this room right here, please. Or maybe the